Imagine standing in an airport, throwing suitcases onto a conveyor belt, while your entire future waits quietly in your throat. That was Farrokh Bulsara's life in London, 1970, a baggage handler with a secret nobody could see yet. He wasn't ordinary, though. Behind those slightly protruding front teeth was a voice that could shake a room. Years earlier, he'd grown up far from London, raised in a strict, traditional household with different expectations entirely. His family had hoped for something safer, something practical, not a life chasing melodies in smoky pubs. But music had already taken root inside him, quietly, long before anyone else noticed it growing. One night, he wandered into a pub and watched a local band called Smile finish their set. Their singer had just quit, walking off stage in frustration, leaving the group without a frontman. Farrokh didn't hesitate. He walked straight up to guitarist Brian May and bassist Roger Taylor afterward. Brian was studying astrophysics at the time, building his own guitar by hand in his spare hours. Roger was training as a dentist, though his real passion clearly lived behind a drum kit. Neither of them expected this strange, confident stranger to change the entire direction of their lives. He told them, plainly, that he could sing better than the man they'd just lost. They laughed at first, until he opened his mouth, and the laughing stopped completely. His range wasn't just wide, it was strange, unpredictable, somehow both delicate and thunderous. Within days, he was their singer. Soon after, he gave himself a new name entirely. Farrokh Bulsara became Freddie Mercury, a name built for stages, not suitcases. The band needed one more piece though, a bassist to replace the one who'd left them. Enter John Deacon, quiet, steady, almost shy, but devastatingly talented once he picked up his instrument. With Freddie, Brian, Roger, and John together, Smile transformed into something entirely new. They renamed themselves Queen, a bold, almost arrogant choice for a band nobody had heard of yet. Freddie designed their logo himself, blending each member's zodiac sign into one striking crest. Around this same time, Freddie met a young woman named Mary Austin at a clothing shop. She sold him clothes, he charmed her relentlessly, and soon they were inseparable, deeply in love. Mary would become the emotional center of his entire life, long after romance faded into something else. She saw him differently than the crowds eventually would, not as a performer, but simply as Freddie. He proposed to her early on, sincere in that moment, certain this was the life he wanted. She said yes without hesitation, moving into a small flat with him above a shop in London. Those quiet early years together would stay with him longer than almost anything that came after. Queen played dingy clubs for almost nothing, sleeping in a cramped van between shows. Money was tight, constantly. Freddie sold his own clothes and record collection just to keep them afloat. He believed, with total conviction, that this strange little band was destined for something enormous. His confidence bordered on arrogance, yet somehow, it never felt hollow, it felt earned. They believed in themselves anyway, recording demos, chasing labels, refusing to sound like anyone else. Eventually, EMI Records took a chance, signing them despite their unusual sound and even stranger ambitions. Their early singles built momentum slowly, but Freddie wanted something bigger, something operatic, something impossible. He began writing a song unlike anything on the radio, blending rock, ballad, and opera into one piece. The band spent grueling weeks in the studio, layering vocal harmonies over and over, take after take. Producers thought it was commercial suicide, 6 minutes long, with no traditional chorus to hook listeners. The recording process alone nearly bankrupted them, weeks spent stacking vocal tracks on top of each other. Tape hissed and wore thin from constant overdubbing, layers upon layers of harmony piling higher. Roger reportedly sang his highest notes so many times his voice nearly gave out completely. Freddie refused to cut a single second, insisting the song needed to breathe exactly as written. When they played it for a skeptical radio DJ, he mocked it, calling it self-indulgent nonsense. Freddie, furious, leaked the track himself, playing it on air before the label could stop him. Listeners flooded the station with calls, begging to hear it again, immediately, on repeat. The single shot straight to #1, proving every executive in that room completely wrong. The music video, strange and theatrical, played constantly on television screens across the country. It looked unlike anything else on air, for faces multiplying into shadow beneath colored light. Critics didn't quite know what to make of it, but audiences simply couldn't stop watching. Queen wasn't just successful now, they were untouchable, redefining what a rock song could even be. Album after album followed, each one bigger, bolder, more theatrical than the last. They wrote anthems built for crowds, songs designed to be stomped and clapped by thousands at once. Stadiums became their true home now, far larger than those cramped clubs where they'd started. World tours followed, arenas packed wall to wall, fans chanting lyrics they'd only just learned. Freddie transformed on stage into something almost mythical, strutting, commanding, utterly fearless in front of thousands. Offstage, though, cracks were forming quietly beneath all that glittering, thunderous success. Freddie began questioning his own identity, his sexuality, his place beside Mary, who he deeply loved. He confessed something to her one devastating night, something that changed both their lives forever. Mary already suspected it, somehow, before he even said the words out loud to her. Their romantic relationship ended that night, but their bond refused to break completely apart. She remained his closest confidant for the rest of his life, no matter what came next. Freddie retreated into a different world after that, one filled with parties, excess, and constant noise. He bought a sprawling mansion, filled it with strangers, animals, and nights that blurred into mornings. The parties grew legendary, wild, extravagant, filled with people Freddie barely knew by name. Underneath the spectacle, though, he was searching for something quieter, something none of it could give him. Fame had made him untouchable on stage, yet strangely lonely everywhere else in his life. A man named Paul Prenter entered his orbit around this time, charming, manipulative, always close by. Paul slowly isolated Freddie from the band, feeding him flattery while quietly cutting off real friendships. Tensions inside Queen grew sharper, arguments erupting over creative control, money, and Freddie's shifting priorities. Brian, Roger, and John felt him slipping away, replaced by an entourage that answered only to Paul. Freddie signed a solo deal behind their backs, chasing something Paul convinced him he deserved alone. The band felt betrayed, blindsided, watching years of trust dissolve over a handshake they weren't part of. Freddie's solo career, though, felt hollow compared to the chemistry only his bandmates could give him. Alone in that mansion, surrounded by people who wanted something from him, he felt truly isolated. He began spending long stretches abroad, chasing distraction across different cities and different faces. None of it filled the space that real friendship, real trust, used to occupy so easily. Then, one quiet afternoon, a doctor delivered news that would reshape everything that came after. Freddie was diagnosed with a serious illness, one carrying enormous stigma during that era. He kept it hidden at first, terrified, processing grief alone before telling anyone close to him. Mary was among the first people he called, arriving at his door within minutes. She held him as reality finally settled in, the two of them crying together on his staircase. Freddie realized then how much time he might have wasted, chasing noise instead of meaning. He looked back at those wild mansion parties differently now, seeing the emptiness beneath all that noise. The people who'd surrounded him for years scattered quickly once real difficulty finally arrived. It was Mary, and eventually his bandmates, who stayed when everything else fell away. He fired Paul Prenter almost immediately, finally seeing the manipulation clearly for what it was. Then he did something braver, he called Brian, Roger, and John, asking for forgiveness directly. The reunion was tense at first, old wounds still raw, trust not easily rebuilt overnight. They sat in a room together, awkward silence hanging heavy between old friends turned strangers. Freddie apologized, genuinely, admitting how far he'd drifted from the people who'd built this with him. Brian, Roger, and John listened, cautious but willing, still holding on to years of shared history. But music had always been their language, and slowly, that language brought them back together. Around this time, organizers were planning something massive, a global charity concert called Live Aid. Nearly every major artist in the world would perform, broadcast live to over 1 billion people. It wasn't just another concert, it was a chance to raise money for people facing famine abroad. Rehearsal footage shows Freddie pushing the band harder than they'd worked in years, chasing perfection. He knew every second on stage that day would matter more than almost anything before it. Freddie saw it as a chance for redemption, a stage worthy of everything they'd survived. Before rehearsals began, he finally told his bandmates the truth about his diagnosis, quietly, honestly. They didn't flinch. Instead, they promised him this performance would be the greatest of their lives. July 13, 1985 arrived, Wembley Stadium packed with over 70,000 fans. Backstage, Freddie stood alone for a moment, staring at the roaring crowd beyond the curtain. Then he walked out, sat at that piano, and struck the very first note. From the opening chords, the entire stadium seemed to rise as one single, breathing organism. Freddie's voice soared over 70,000 people, commanding silence, then chaos, then pure euphoria. He led the crowd through call and response chants, his energy somehow reaching every single row. He paced that stage like he owned every square inch of it, fist raised, sweat pouring freely. Millions more watched from home, television screens flickering in living rooms across dozens of countries. Nobody who saw it that day ever quite forgot what they witnessed unfolding on stage. Brian's guitar cut through the air like lightning, Roger's drums thundering beneath every beat. John Deacon's bass line held it all together, steady, unshaken, exactly like it always had. Song after song rolled into the next, barely a breath between each one. The crowd sang every word back at them, a wall of sound rising toward the sky. Even backstage, other legendary performers stopped to watch, stunned by what they were witnessing. For those 20 unforgettable minutes, For Estranged Friends became, once again, simply Queen. The performance is still remembered as one of the greatest live sets in music history. Freddie gave everything that day, every ounce of pain transformed into pure, defiant joy. He knew, standing there, that his time was limited, yet he refused to perform like it. Instead, he gave the crowd a celebration, not a farewell, not yet, not that day. In the years following, Freddie continued creating music, even as his illness slowly progressed. He found something else too, a quiet, steady companionship with a man named Jim Hutton. Jim stayed by his side through those final years, offering the kind of calm Freddie had rarely known. He recorded until his voice could barely hold steady, refusing to stop while he still could. In one of his final music videos, he appeared visibly thinner, makeup covering how frail he'd become. Fans noticed, worry spreading quietly through the fanbase, though the band said little publicly. Freddie preferred it that way, keeping his diagnosis private until he felt ready to share it himself. Some sessions required him to rest between every single line, pain etched quietly across his face. Still, he pushed forward, determined to leave behind every last song he possibly could. His bandmates stayed close now, present for every session, every quiet moment between takes. They never once asked him to stop, understanding this was exactly where he wanted to be. Mary remained beside him too, a constant thread connecting his beginning to his ending. Freddie Mercury passed away in November 1991, surrounded by people who truly loved him. Just one day before he passed, he finally confirmed publicly what fans had long suspected quietly. He wanted the truth to come from him, in his own words, not through rumor or speculation. The world mourned a performer unlike any other, one who refused to be anything but himself. His voice, though, never really left. It echoes through stadiums, headphones, and quiet bedrooms even now. Queen's music outlived every prediction, every skeptical executive, every doubt thrown at them early on. New generations discovered him decades later, in films, in stadiums, in songs played at weddings and funerals alike. They didn't need to have lived through the 80s to feel exactly what he was giving them. That's the strange power real artistry carries, it refuses to stay locked inside its own era. Freddie once walked into a pub as a baggage handler with nothing but a dream and a voice. He left behind one of the greatest legacies in music, built on courage, chaos, and unstoppable talent. Bandmates who once nearly walked away from him still speak of that reunion as something sacred. Mary, decades later, still keeps his memory close, guarding the private man behind the public legend. And every time that opening piano note plays, somewhere, another stadium rises to its feet. That's the story of a boy who refused to be ordinary and became legend instead.